Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. This week's podcast is a podcast on the road, and it's a podcast I'm dedicating to my good friend and mixed doubles partner, Sarah Mitten. We are getting ready. It's the morning of Friday, April 29th. We are getting ready to play our senior pro mixed division today. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm getting ready to battle with her, and so I want to dedicate this to her. And what I want to talk about in this podcast is that very concept. Understanding the battle, understanding what you're doing when you're out on the pickleball court. And this is going to be a straight-through podcast. It's a riff-style podcast because it's a mobile podcast. So let's jump right into it. Let's jump right into this concept of getting ready for the battle, understanding what we're doing out there. And I'm going to look at it in two different perspectives. I know I'm using the term battle, which is kind of a heavy term these days with all the news and everything like that. Lots of parts of the world dealing with that in a more serious way, and I'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But I'm going to use a term because it's a term that we use commonly for that, to express a situation where you are going into a sort of a confrontation, right? Like me versus you, and we're gonna duke it out here, right? We're gonna battle. We're gonna fight on the court, and the first thing about understanding the battle is that when you are playing, you need to be prepared for that sort of encounter, that sort of relationship with the other players on the court. You have an ally who's your partner on the court, and then you have quote-unquote enemies who are the players on the other side of the court. But they're your opponents, right? I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that. When you're playing a rally and they're trying to get the best of you and you're trying to get the best of them, that's a battle. You're fighting with them over a pickleball game, but you're fighting with them, right? Otherwise, there's no tension in the game. That's the tension in our game. And so when you're getting ready to battle, right? When you're going out to battle on a pickleball court, a couple of things I wanted to point out from a functional standpoint of the battle. One is you need to get yourself prepared to battle, and in your mind, you need to understand that you're in a battle. And, as an example, it depends on the type of thing you're doing. Even in a rec game, right? You're at the rec facility and you're just playing a standard rec game, 7, 9, or 11 pointer. You took your paddles. You don't know who you're playing with or who you're playing against. You get on the court and you do your best to exchange that game or have that battle as well as possible. But let's say you're playing a little bit more competitive kind of a game. So you're in a round robin in a weekend or one of these, a small tournament or something like that. Or just a competitive match against friends of yours that you set up. In those situations, what I want you to understand is that when you are going into that game, into that battle, if you will, you are putting yourself in a position of attacking and being attacked, in the sense that good things will happen sometimes to you, for your team, but also good things will sometimes happen for your opponents, which by implication means that your team will lose, right? Will be put in an awkward spot because the other team did something successfully. And you have to understand that there's like a back and forth in all of these games that you're playing, all these pickleball games, that it's not simply your side's, you don't have complete control of it, right? It's not like you can say, if you won the rally, you did well, and if you lost the rally, you did poorly, right? It's not, you don't have complete control. Sometimes you will win rallies because your opponents played poorly or made a mistake, and sometimes you'll lose rallies because your opponents did just a fantastic job, right? Nothing that you did wrong. It's not like, I did something wrong. No, the other team is fighting you, right? You're in a battle. So understanding this back and forth, this balance of tension between you and your opponents, and the back and forth of the game, of the battle, I think will help you perhaps frame it out better when you're out there. And rather than looking at it all, rather than turning an eye internally to yourself and your team only, and I'm not saying, don't try and improve and don't try and find areas to get better and things like that. That's a different conversation. But when you're in the middle of a match, when you're in the middle of a game, understand that there's you fighting, but there's also your opponents on the other side fighting, and that's this battle that we're engaged in when we're out on the pickleball court. And the other thing is, we've talked about this before a couple of times, I think, in different settings, but the concept of respecting your opponents, of honoring your opponents, right? Rather than making it all about yourself and about what you did or your partner did, consider honoring your opponents and respecting what the work they put in, right? Respecting the fact that, one of your opponents has spent the last, say, I don't know, 2 months drilling a shot or working on their game. And so this time when they played, all of a sudden that area of the game that used to be weak for them, that you were able to exploit and get points from, is no longer there. And so, now you got to go back and solve your puzzle, right? You have to go work on yourself and perhaps elevate your game so that now you can deal with the elevation in your opponent's game. And so, look at it in terms of the entire battlefield, if you will, the entire picture of what's going on the court, and not simply, oh my God, I can't believe I popped that ball up, or I can't believe I missed that shot, or whatever it is that's haunting you or vexing you about your play. Consider the overall picture of the battlefield and what's going on, and the fact that you're in a battle with your opponents. That said, let's give some perspective to this. Right? I keep on using the term battle. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a commonly used term in this context. But let's put it in context, because, there are battles that, we have on the pickleball court. There are battles that people have in their lives with, their health, their family, things like that. There's battles that the more literal battles, right, that people have out on fields with tanks and guns, and unfortunately it still happens, right, things like that. So the reason I bring this up is not to minimize the importance of your pickleball game, right? I don't want you to feel like, well, this is, why am I doing this? But let's at least give it some perspective. Let's put some perspective around this and understand that if you're out on the pickleball court, right, you're standing on a pickleball court, it's a nice day, you're out there with people, hopefully you like at least some of them, right? And you're shaking hands with them, tapping paddles, bumping hands, sharing happiness when you hit a fantastic, crazy shot, sharing the kind of, oh no, when, something doesn't go your way, whatever it is, right? You're having this back and forth. By stepping out on the pickleball court, your day is a good day. You've already won the day. I don't know, I can't really express it any more than that. Just the joy of just be on the court, enjoy it. Understand that sometimes you're going to win. Understand that sometimes you're going to lose. Sometimes you're going to lose games that you're like, I don't know how I lost that game. It's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to win games, frankly, where your opponents are going to be wondering, how did I lose that game, right? So how did you win that game? That's just part of the deal. But just being out on the court, go out there, enjoy the struggle, enjoy that little, sort of mini battle, if you will, while you're out there. Understand what you're doing. Continue growing as a pickleball player. That's a beautiful part of this as well. Just the challenging ourselves to continue to grow and understand the game better. But at the end of the day, let's put it in context. Let's put it in perspective and understand that just by playing on the court, regardless of what the score ends up being, you've already won and you've already had a great day. Hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. We'll be back next week, I think, into the studio, I believe, and we'll have a more traditional podcast. But wish me luck today out on the courts, and I'm going to be out on a pickleball court in a couple of hours, so I'm already going to have a good day. I hope you do too, and we'll see you next time.